Hey, welcome to the show, everybody. My name is Mike. I will be your host. This is the Leadership Toolkit, the definitive leadership podcast for your opportunity to learn and grow from awesome leaders from all kinds of different verticals of business, all different backgrounds. You're going to learn from their successes. Often we learn from their failures. And I was having a conversation just before we started with my amazing guest today that, leadership really, it's part of every part of our life. So I am super excited to introduce to you today a good friend of mine, Mr. Robb Holman. I'm bringing on the show. He is an author, a speaker. He is a leadership coach. He is a father. He's a faith-filled person. He's somebody I look up to, has become a good friend. Robb, welcome to the show today. I am so excited to have you on board with me on the Leadership Toolkit, man.
Mike, as soon as you asked me, I was already there in my heart, my mind, my brother. So this is the honor's all mine, the joy's all mine. I'm looking forward to a really meaningful conversation, whether you and I have it off recording or on recording, live, not live. It's always kind of life-giving for sure. So thank you.
Absolutely. And, it's funny because we were talking right beforehand and some of the conversation I always share with my guests. I'm like, I have to make sure that we got to get all the tidbits while we're live. And inevitably, you always fall into just this great organic conversation. And I look forward to that today with you, Robb. So do me a favor and just take a couple of minutes, if you would, share some of your background, some of your leadership story. I've got to get it out in front here. A new book out right now, Lessons from Abdul, which I have read, and it is awesome. And I was telling you right beforehand, but we'll get into that and some of the content from that in a little bit. So just jump in and share with the audience who you are.
Yes. So if you can't tell already, very passionate individual. I'm 48. I've been married for close to 20 years to my amazing wife, Karen. And I have 3 kids, 15, 13, and 8, RJ, Kayla, and Zach. We are truly in the thick of things as it relates to activities and homework and hobbies. And I mean, you name it. And I wouldn't want it any other way. I adore my wife. I adore my kids. I find reasons to come home early, so to speak, because I thoroughly enjoy my family and I love being present with them and being engaged, fully engaged as much as I possibly can. So Mike and everyone listening, my entrepreneurial journey started right after I graduated from college, from university. And I was the ripe age of 21, and where a lot of my friends were like, I want to go to college and stay in college for 7-8 years. After 4 years, I was like, come on, life's too short. I got to get out of this place. I got to use these ideas in my mind, in my heart. And I was off and running, starting my first business by the age of 21, had 2 businesses by the age of 23, and now at 48, I've had the amazing opportunity to found or co-found 9 different organizations in the last 20 some years. So it's been a total joy. It's been a privilege. And I've met along the way so many amazing people, one of which you, Mike Phillips, you talking about how I've inspired you. Well, the feeling is completely mutual. Anytime I get a chance to get around fellow leaders, colleagues in leadership, those that are not only teaching it through their content production and delivering that content, but they're just living it. It's highly experiential to them. And Mike, you're one person in this world that I look up to as well, because you have an opportunity through what you do and who you are to make not just an influence in this world, but a lasting impact. So for that, I say thank you.
Oh man, thank you so much. I appreciate you very much, Robb. Yeah. So do me a favor. Let's just dive right into it. One of the things, and I love having these just conversations on leadership and life. And one of the things that you brought in, and I'm going to give you the plug early. Yeah. Robb has this book, Lessons from Abdul. It was really impactful to me. I love the fact there's a couple of things for leaders that are watching the show. And I'm going to give the early pitch that you should go buy the book. I love the fact, and I said this right beforehand, that the way Robb writes, it's human, and you can read through this. I think I read it in 3.5, 4 hours, right? So it's impactful, because one of the things that I thought was really cool is Abdul is somebody that impacted your life, but from a very early age. And I think so often in business, right? We get into business and we view it like you were saying, hey, after college, I got so much to share. We look at in business as men or as business people, we look to go, well, I need to go make this impact in business. But it starts much earlier than that, doesn't it?
It sure does. It's a great point that you're highlighting, because so many times leadership, I get asked this question all the time, Mike, are you born a great leader? Is it something you grow into?
Sure.
And you probably know my answer, but I think there's some that, have natural leadership ability, if I can call it that. But my goodness, we're all leaders in our own right. We all have a sphere of influence, a network, whether it's personal, professional, or all the above. And we can hone some things along the way, right? Of how to better be a selfless and servant leader. And so I believe it starts very, very young. And that can be just turning to the one person beside you and having a really positive impact in that one life by how you encourage, how you inspire, how you help support based on a need, or just based on who they are. You just want to honor them. And I think that the earlier that we recognize that and have a heightened awareness of it, I think we can grow by leaps and bounds that much more, because we're starting to understand and grasp that very early. I think so many people, Mike, they wait until they're, out of college, out of university, maybe been in the workforce for a number of years, and someone say, do you know what? You're a leader. You might want to go through some training. It's like, I love that. It's better than nothing, because you want to meet people right where they are and see them enhance their leadership, their abilities, their skill set, et cetera. But why not start young?
Sure. Well, and I like the fact that there's a couple of things. One, I thought this was the book is a really nice tribute to Abdul, who is a longtime mentor, coach, leader for you. I thought that was awesome. And I don't know if you intended it this way, but some of the things that you talked about was, and I hope I'm not giving away too much by bringing this up, but like when he passed a few years ago, I don't know if this was part of the search for closure, but I thought that was a really nice tribute and sort of an awesome way to get to that. So I wanted to compliment you on that.
Thank you for that. And I don't think obviously I include myself at the forefront of what I'm about to say.
Sure.
I don't think we do a good enough job honoring those that have gone before us. I once heard it put like this, Mike, that let those that have kind of paved the way before us, that have instilled certain life values in us, let their ceiling become our floor. And I think one of the ways that we do that is they have paved the way. They planted seeds in us. Again, if it's a relatively healthy leader, an effective leader in a life. We've all had maybe bad leaders and ones that manipulate and do things for selfish gain. I'm talking about not a perfect leader or a mentor. I'm talking about a healthier one that we really realize at some point along our journey, they have come alongside of me. They've seen things in me that I have not recognized in myself, only to pull those seeds of greatness out to have greater impact and influence on those around me. And so this book was, it was a way to honor Abdul for what he did, the imprint he left in my life, but more importantly, who he was. And in doing so, I feel I have a responsibility now that he instilled so many things in me. And I was blessed enough to receive these things very deeply and now pass them along to other people. I believe I have a tremendous responsibility, not like a weighty, unhealthy, like heaviness on me, but a responsibility to be a good steward of these lessons that he taught me. So now I can take it to a whole new place. And I believe that's what he always intended.
Yeah. And I love the fact that in the book, the way you present him, he's a very organic and wholesome leader. Like he's boots on the ground. Let me do this for you. And that's something you talk about too, and you kind of alluded to a second ago. I want to backtrack just a moment, because you talk about how as leaders, like we want to give this, we want to move something forward. We want to gift this to other people. But one of the things you really focus on, and I found very interesting, actually there's two things, but I'll dive into one. You talked about, what's the difference between us as leaders constantly giving versus having the vulnerability, and that's come up a lot as a leader, to receive. So what's sort of the interplay between us as leaders giving versus receiving and such?
Yeah, I just want to be really explicit with this. Giving is a good thing. It's really good.
No, absolutely.
I mean, I just want to say that, but I really feel that there's a timely and needed balance that needs to be put into this equation of both the giving and receiving. And I put this in the intro of the book, Mike, and hopefully you don't mind me going there. And
no, absolutely.
Okay. So I think an illustration that really shares quite nicely what I'm about to say, or doubles down on it, is a story that I think most people watching are familiar with. And if you're not, hang tight on this. But You probably heard this, or at least heard a bit of it. Man was in a flood, and he cries out to his creator, God, and he says, "Oh God, please save me in this flood." And the flood, the rain's coming, the flood's becoming more intense and greater, and the winds are blowing. And a person, shortly after he prayed to God, a person comes in the form of a canoe, comes in a canoe and says, "Hey, hop aboard, man," or, I got you. And he waves it off. No, I'll be fine. I just prayed to God and he'll save me. And then shortly after that, a boat comes along with a bunch of people in the boat. And they're, again, waves are starting to crash now. The flood's becoming greater. He's now, I'm sure, on the top floor of his house, if not the roof. And they say, "Come on, man, come on. You got to go. You're not going to have much more of a chance to live." And he waves them off. No, I'll be fine. I'll be fine. God's got me. I already prayed. And then lastly, a helicopter comes. And it's like the last chance. And the person says, "Come on, man, I got you," and drops the ladder off the helicopter for him to grab hold, climb up the helicopter, and free himself to safety.
Mm-hmm.
He denies that third and final attempt. And tragically, the man dies in the flood, and he's brought before the very God, the very person that he was crying out to save him. And God said, "Well, I tried through the person, the canoe, the boat, and the helicopter, but yet you denied." In other words, Mike, he was unable to receive from others in life's most dire and challenging situations. And sadly, we can do the same. Sometimes it's extreme, where we cannot authentically and genuinely receive from each other or from one another. But there's also, it's more subtle times of just maybe a compliment or a praise that will deflect, and we won't allow to really seep in and sink in. And I'm a firm believer that when we actually learn how practically to deeply receive, we can selflessly serve our sphere of influence even that much greater.
100%. And I do love the fact that you shared that story. I've heard that sort of, call it a parabola story, whatnot. And I've heard it definitely shared more or less tactfully, right?
Yeah.
Where it's like God's like, "Hey, I sent this, pay attention, bonehead." And I mean, for me, and not to get way off the subject, but I've always viewed God as sort of that loving father, right? Mm-hmm. Just like how would we talk to our kids, right? And that's how he's like, "Hey, bonehead, pay attention." So that's my relationship, right? And so I'm curious, when you're talking about us receiving and us being vulnerable, is there a level? Because I agree, and we've all said, and you share this in the book too, that it's better to give than to receive, right? Mm-hmm. But we do have to know how to receive. And is there a tipping point? Is there something where it's like, "Hey, I'm being too vulnerable to the people that I'm supposed to be leading"? How do you define that, or how do you measure that?
I mean, and you and I talked about this off air as well, but
mm-hmm.
I think when we view ourselves like this, Mike, that we take ourselves with us wherever we go. There's not, like when I put on my professional hat here and then I go home and I'm a husband, a dad of 3. And then I bump into someone at the convenience store and I got to put on a different hat. That's too confusing for me. I mean, maybe some people embrace complexity a little bit more than I do, but I love to live and lead out of a place of simplicity. Mm-hmm. And that first, I really believe it starts with understanding and embracing just who I am. And when I do that, and I encourage other people to do the same, when you're comfortable in your own skin, doesn't mean you're not professional, doesn't mean that you don't, have filters on when you're in certain environments. No, but there's a certain level of awareness and appreciation with how God's made you, how he's made me, and comfortable and confident in and out of that place. I think just organically then, as a natural result, mm-hmm. that we're just free to be ourselves. And so for me, I do like to be real with people. I like to share in life with people. I like to share personal stories in the professional world with people.
Sure.
Matter of fact, Mike, you know me, I get paid to do that because that's who I am. And I just let that come out organically. So to answer your question, I think it's more, and what I'm after more with people is embrace your unique identity. Okay. Understand the gifts that God has given you, your temperament, your passion areas, your personal core values, the very things that make up who you are, your life milestones. When you begin to embrace who you are, you just begin to be more of yourself regardless of where you go. And in that place, then now it shouts authenticity, which is a buzzword we know in life and in leadership, right?
Sure.
There's that word again, Mike.
Gotta be authentic.
Yeah, you gotta be authentic. So I think that's a wonderful place to start for people. And when you do that, you begin opening yourself up, at least the potential or invitation to open yourself up to your overall sphere of influence. Okay. Now, when now you're free to be you, that invitation is available to all. But there's an exchange that's needed, right? You can be authentic, but if someone else is closed-minded and closed-hearted, what good can it do? So in a sense, what I love to share, to teach, to inspire people to do is, and leaders of teams, is what would it look like if you foster and mature an environment, a workplace environment where people are free to be who they are, and be willing to exchange in life and humanity together, more so than just sharing about professional stuff. Now, you have professional goals and you have things to accomplish. Please hear me. Please hear me on that. I understand. There's workplace vision, there's workplace strategy and goals, and there's timelines associated with all this. All I'm saying is, foundationally, if people can be who they're truly called to be, and there's an exchange there, awareness and exchange there of life and humanity, and an intentional connection through story, through personal story on a very consistent basis, I think that just opens us up to now all being real together. And I think in that invitation now is an opportunity to really get to know each other. And that requires both the giving and receiving. If it's just one-sided, right? If everyone's giving, I put this in the book, if everyone's giving all the time, who would be left to receive?
Right. I mean, we're constantly, hey, I'm giving. And then I don't remember what your response was. I remember reading that in the book specifically.
Yeah.
But the other thing that's interesting, so when we're talking about receiving, I'm just stuck on the leader piece of it, right? Because for me, like, I'm constantly trying to grow my staff. I'm constantly trying to grow and lead my family. Maybe there's a bunch of areas like where you're talking about being an authentic leader. Because you're saying if we're constantly giving, I've been caught in that trap before where I feel like I'm just constantly, I'm giving. And if that's something I'm wired to do, I never really run out of battery for it. So what would you say, when it comes to leadership or somebody that's quote unquote at the top, what would you say are some of the biggest challenges that people that are in that top level position, executive CEOs, leadership, what are a few of the challenges, maybe 1, 2, 3 things that you have seen from the position? Because you are going in and you're able to coach kind of unencumbered, right? Because you're like, hey, I'm not here every day, so here's what you need to do. What are the challenges you see people in those roles face when it comes to really authentically receiving from other people?
And even before I answer that directly, Mike, you bring up a wonderful point in that, so many leaders like you are so selfless. They are servant leaders, and that energizes them. But what I always say is there's always a deeper well to be dug. And so in that steps the barriers to authentically receiving, so we can even dig that well even deeper and give even more generously than we ever have before. Okay. So I'm just going to name a few. All right. And I don't know if maybe 1 or 2 jump out to you that you want to do a deeper dive on. So, okay. We've all been burned in relationship. I don't know if I need to say that a second time, but I think we've all been burned. There's always been lack of trust, or someone says they're going to do something, doesn't follow up. So one of the barriers from like genuinely receiving from individuals is hurt can hold us back. It doesn't have to be extreme hurt. It could be when someone really hurt you by their actions, by their words, a combination of both. But I would say more frequently, it's subtle things people do. They don't follow through with what they said they're going to do. And now all of a sudden there's a gap with trust. There's hurt that in time can compound on itself. And then now when they come to you and they offer something to you, maybe a word of encouragement, maybe some help or support because they realize you're in need, receiving from them very deeply can be a much greater challenge than we would ever ask or think. Why? Because hurt is holding us back. So that could be one. Okay.
Yeah.
Another
I mean, you're
one,
keeping them at arm's length. Like, well, you got to get around this first, right? You got to get through the.
Well, that's it. And the thing is, Mike, like we know we're pretty smart, leaders, we're savvy. We use the right language. No. I don't need help right now. I'm good. Thanks though. Thanks for your offer. But deep down inside, we really do need help. Or we'll say this, maybe that person to where hurt's holding us back a little bit and there's a barrier up. They'll say, hey, Mike, I realize you did a really great job on that project. Man, you nailed the timing on it. You led your team just in amazing fashion. So I just want to say thank you for that. And we'll deflect the praise. We'll say, hey, thanks real quick, but it was really my team. Now it sounds admirable and praiseworthy, and to some degree it is, but what we're also doing is deflecting a praise that's specifically meant for you very deeply, so you can even lead that much more courageously out of that place after that comment's genuinely received. So hurt can hold us back. I want to name at least one more, and this is I really like this one. I call it the paradox of closeness. So you could take this into partnerships, marriages, business relationships, team members and leadership, all that. But sometimes we've been in a season with a team member for a while, and we get to know all their quirks, all their idiosyncrasies. We know all the buttons to push. In other words, we become a little too familiar with them. It's almost like familiarity breeds contempt. Like all of a sudden, those closest to us, we have the most difficult time receiving deeply from. Why? Because we've grown too close. We know each other so well. You think otherwise, that's why I call it the paradox of closeness. You think that those would be the individuals we'd receive even more deeply from, but oftentimes they are the ones that we find it the most difficult to receive from. So we got to acknowledge some things there, be able to work through some things by talking some things out, maybe understanding, etc. So because I feel like the greatest problems that have ever been solved, the greatest ideas that have ever been had, come when there's a unified front, like minds, like hearts, and you just feel like you're climbing the mountain together. And that is the genuine of both giving and receiving that way.
I love that.
Yeah.
One of the things that you bring up and where my head went to when you're talking about the paradox of closeness, because you're saying, hey, I know this person's this thing that drives me nuts. And it's like, I think you likened it best to a spouse, right? They leave the toothpaste cap off and so on and so forth. Right. Well, what we have to realize is on the flip side, they know all of our buttons as well. And so when somebody comes from a place of really trying to be genuine and say, hey, you were awesome at that, or I really appreciate this from you and so forth, I think it's easy for us because we go, well, that person knows they know the little stuff that frustrated them. Are they really being genuine? So we start to question that. And the hard part for somebody is, if you're listening to this or watching this as a leader, as a manager, as a spouse, as a friend, you got to realize that is the reason you're questioning it because that's how you operate. It's not because that's how they're operating in the moment. Right?
Wonderful, wonderful point. Mike, do we have time for one more?
Absolutely. Dude, we got as much time. Listen, we could give a 4-hour seminar, Rob. I got all the time in the world this afternoon. I'd chat with you forever. I
get so passionate about this stuff. That's why I wrote the book, right? And in chapter 1, I lay out what I consider the 7 primary reasons why people are unable to deeply receive, right? These barriers that hold us back. So I'll just talk about one more. In this, it's the fear of conditions placed on giving. Okay. So let's say I go to you and I have a heart to give, Mike, man. I just want to help you. Maybe you're getting ready for a move. Okay. And Mike, I want to come over. I want to help you. No need for movers. Like I want to be your mover. you may, right? And some people have more of this tendency, right? This is a big barrier for some. You may be afraid, might not be able to share it as explicitly as I am right now, but you may just be afraid of like, if I help you out, does that mean that there's strings attached here? Does that mean that you may need to help me out at a later time? So there could be fear based on, even when there's a genuineness in someone's heart to give, no strings attached. We might, as the recipient, be like, not so sure about that. My capacity's full as a leader, as a human being on the home front. And you know what? I'm not so sure you're asking this like just out of the kindness of your heart. There might be something attached to this. I don't want to take a chance. So I'm just going to let it be. And then I'll go into my default mechanism of deflection. Being like, hey, thanks so much, but we're taken care of now. I really appreciate it.
This.
You see what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. So they actually, if you've ever read, I cannot remember the name of the book now, but it's Robert Cialdini, that talks about, it's the law of reciprocation.
Yep.
Right. There is like an unspoken rule. There's an unspoken law that if I do this for you, then you owe me, sort of deal. And he's talking about it in a sales training sense, but I think humans, right, the human condition, we tend to operate that way. And so like what you're saying, I think you put it in really good terms, is the fear of conditions. Is it's like, well, okay, yeah, but if I do that, I know there's somewhere in this deep recess of my mind, there's this law of reciprocation. And so then I'm going to have to do that. So right. I think that's very valid. One other one that I want to share, because I remember this from the book as you're talking, and I think it was chapter 1 also, when you're talking about the things that keep us from authentic receiving. And this is going to be one. So if you're in a leadership role, if you're in a top management role, if you're in business, if you're a human with a type A personality, and I'm going to let you expand on this, Rob, because you'll know as soon as I say it. One of the things, and I still struggle with this, is that, so, and I don't remember how you worded it specifically, you correct me if I'm wrong, but it's sort of that fear of letting go of control.
That's it. Yeah. Yeah. It is literally letting go of control, because think of when you're in position of giving, who's in control of that process?
When I'm giving, I'm in control of the giving,
You're
right?
in control.
I can give, and I can do all of the things to be able to help promote you and grow you. Absolutely.
There you do. So think of that, just people that give, it's wonderful, but you're still in control of the process when you give.
Yeah,
see,
absolutely.
when you are a receiver, you lose control, at least to some degree. And the average person, because of the vulnerability in it, the depth potentially, how it can touch your soul, so the average person does not like not to be in control. We like to be in control. So now to position yourself in a space where you are not as much in control. But Mike, there's good news. There's good news for the people that like to be in control. I'm putting up a hand right here now.
Okay.
There's good news, because as a receiver, learning how to genuinely and authentically receive, you are the gatekeeper of your own heart. Now, it doesn't, so what I mean by that is, it doesn't mean that you have to receive from everyone, everywhere, but anyone at any time. And there's a difference. See, my book talks about the hidden power of receiving from anyone, anytime. I didn't say everyone, all time, and so are we positioning, are we posturing our heart in such a way? Now, again, there's barriers, which we discussed, and they go in a little bit more in depth and more barriers in the book. But do we believe in the power of receiving so much to where we're willing to take the positive and courageous steps? This does require bravery. And I know the leaders watching, we got some brave leaders, Mike. There's no doubt about it, because leadership is all about bravery. But if we could begin
especially right now,
come on now, preach it. If we could begin to channel that bravery that so many leaders are, experiencing and stepping out in, if we can channel that into better receiving, so we can even give more generously and greatly out of that place, it is a game changer. So I just want to say it, that we are the gatekeepers of our own heart in receiving in this process. But we don't want to, we got to know when to lower and receive good. So I'm not talking about like receiving from takers.
Energy vampires.
There you go. Right. Yeah, thank you for making that distinction, because what we are talking about is in a healthy sense. And we have to, use awareness. We've got to be mindful of understanding who the, energy vampires are and the takers, and the genuine people, like really looking to help, really looking to offer compliments and words of encouragement to lift us up, not to tear us down in a manipulative way. And that requires us to be a bit astute and also to be to a level of awareness for sure.
Well, and I think going back to what you said earlier, it doesn't have to be some, so often, like we'll get into a conversation like this and somebody may be watching or listening to the podcast later and they go, oh man, they're waiting for this monumental thing. Like your background is basketball. I always love football analogies, basketball analogies and so forth. When you're talking about, you said something that just clicked with me, like being the receiver makes you to be forces you to be more vulnerable. Let's think about a football analogy, right? If you're the person that's giving the pass, like you're throwing it and you're helping direct that role, you're directing that movement, you're directing that route. Well, the person receiving the ball, inclusive of basketball, right? You throw a really good pass down court and so forth. That person's more vulnerable because what are they focused on? They're focused on receiving that from you, then sometimes the stuff that's going on around them, and it can allow them to get hit and it can allow them to get hurt, like you said, and then it holds us back. I don't want to take that again. And so, one of the things where I started to go, and I get sidetracked so easily just because I enjoy these conversations, is if somebody's listening to this, or then sometimes we expect that monumental pass, right? It's the touchdown pass. It's the one that's going to get me the perfect 3-point shot. It's the one that's going to get me to that next level in business. Yeah. And the reality is it's not always those massive things. Sometimes it's the little things that we're not even realizing. It is the compliment in the moment. It's, I always, I often joke on the podcast here about, paying people in hugs and high fives. And it's a little bit tongue in cheek, but at the same time, there's a lot of value in that. Somebody just being acknowledged for a job well done can help propel them to the next place. It's not about scoring the touchdown on every play. It's about moving closer to the first down. It's not even getting the first down on the next play. It's about getting closer to the first down. It's about working the ball in the basketball world. I've never been a basketball player, so I have to assume a little bit. I've watched plenty.
You're using my language though. This is good. This is good.
Yeah. But it's about moving that ball down the court. It's not, you're not taking the full court shot every time. Yeah. It's not always right at the buzzer. Yeah. It's just moving it down the court. And there's as much value often from your teammates, from the people that are on the sidelines cheering you on, as there is from the fans or from the coach, in those instances. I want to ask you another question, because one of the things that you refer to and you brought up, and you've brought this up, you and I have talked about this in the past, but I want to get you to offer a distinction, because I think you did a good job of outlining it in the book. Sort of what's the difference between, and we're talking about definitions, between somebody that is a leader in a leadership role versus a management role versus a mentorship role? Because you often referred in the book to Abdul as very much a mentor of yours. And so how would you make those distinctions in those different areas? Can they be, and are they mutually exclusive?
Yeah, it's a wonderful point. Listen, I think so many of us want the black and white lines. We want categories, and they help. And I will use, there's some distinctives for sure. There's certainly some dotted lines. I talk to certain people at times, they're like, well, in this particular situation, I need to put more of my mentor hat on. And then this particular time, I need to be more of a leader. And then this one, more of a manager. And, a leader for me is someone that empowers another person. I mean, in other words, gets underneath of them only to lift them up. In many regards, now, they may certainly have a vision, but they're sharing in that vision with the one that they're getting under and lifting up. And the heart of a leader, Mike, I really believe the heart of a leader is, empowering your sphere of influence in such a way to where they far surpass you, or at least it sets them up to far surpass you, not wanting always to lead them. In other words, leadership for me is all about It's creating other leaders. Whereas managing, there's some leadership in management. Managing is, all right, you have this team and you want to maximize their ability. You want to develop them. You want to mature them. You want to grow them. Now, certainly leaders do that too, but managers, they're kind of managing the situation. They're managing the personalities. They're managing the gifts. They're helping mature and develop each and every single team member and the team collectively to reach a bit of a maturation together. And then mentors, they come alongside of you because perhaps they're a step or two ahead of you in a specific area or areas. And they then invest in you, and they invest in you sometimes just in a very short period of time, and sometimes an extended period of time. Mm-hmm. And so what I believe their primary role is to come alongside of you, but to teach you, to instruct you, to even coach you, so you can one day not only mature, not only develop, not only far surpass them, but ultimately have the impact the way that Abdul had in my life. So you can even see, even how I'm describing them, a lot of it is they're interconnected, there's dotted lines, but there is uniqueness at the same time. So I don't know if that helps or makes things more confusing, Mike, but.
No, I think it's good. I always, because I think when we talk about it from a business viewpoint, and I think one of the things that I love about you, Rob, is the fact that it's like, yes, it's business, but you said it earlier, like it's just simple, like be who you are, be authentically who you are. Like this is Rob. You don't get a different Rob at church as you get Rob at home, or you get Rob on stage, or you get Rob in business consulting. Like you're just Rob.
Yeah.
And so I think that's one of the things that it's easy, especially for someone like yourself, like, yeah, there are blurred lines. Mm-hmm. If we break it up, and because I'm very much a process guy, and I like for when people take notes, and I'm just going to break this down very simply for what you said, or what I heard you say, is leaders lift, managers mature others, and mentors guide. And so the thing is, those traits easily can be on any of the others and so forth. So
I like it. No, I
hear buzzing.
Yeah, I know.
Buzzing.
Go figure. You go live, and the whole and landscapers all around the neighborhood now.
Oh, gotcha.
Mike, I wanted to.
I didn't know if it was feedback.
Yeah, no feedback at all. They just go figure. Hey, watch out! Do you realize I'm something?
That's funny. That was what I was saying. I was like, is that my microphone?
No. Hey, listen.
Perfect.
You know what I'll chalk it up to? I think with what you just said, I think heaven opened up and there's a trumpet sound or something. I just think it was so good,
Yeah, but I don't know that was the case.
You're spot on. Yeah.
One thing too, that I love the fact that you can pull leadership from anywhere. I'm going to shift gears a little bit, because I know, and yes, we're talking a lot about the book. Book came out last week, 2 weeks ago.
Came out April 1st. Yeah, so just
April
a couple weeks
1st,
ago. Yep.
2 weeks ago. And so again, I would encourage anybody, I'm going to throw this up here, but to definitely check out the website. Go to Rob's website, lessonsfromabdul.com. And it's a quick read. It's a good read. It's an opportunity, because for myself, you and I were talking a little bit before we went live. One of the unique things about the way you write, and I know we've been friends now for some time, but besides that is the fact that it's so genuine, and it's just very grassroots and real. And so, like, one of the stories you were sharing in there, we were talking beforehand, I have a young daughter in gymnastics, and she's a competitor, and you were talking about coaching your daughter in basketball. Yeah. And I think that's one of those times, like, you can take some real leadership lessons in parenting, both successes and failures, because the reality is we learn sort of by association how to parent from our parents. Sure, and then we learn sort of by association from other parents when they tell us what we're doing right or wrong. Right. But until you're in the thick of that, and it takes really some quite genuine lessons. Would you share that a little bit on the stream here? Just kind of, because Rob has a story in here about coaching his daughter in basketball, and I was like, man, it put me right in that space where I was like, I can see myself in there with one of my kids. And for leaders, whether it's your kids or your staff members and those people, like when Robb shares this, I think you'll see you can be right there with it.
You really can. And the one I believe you're referring to, Mike, is my daughter, Kayla, who's a big basketball player. And I'm known as Coach Dad. Now, I don't coach her
Yeah.
formally with travel teams or school or anything like that, but I'm Coach Dad at home, of course.
Right.
And so Kayla and I go out for our normal workout, and which we frequent. I mean, I'm always constantly working on certain things that are ball handling, and I want her to be as versatile as possible. And so in this particular day, I go out and give her some drills to do, and I was there coaching her, teaching her to do these drills and kind of pushing her. Come on, that's what I thought my role was. It had worked up to that point, Mike.
Sure.
This day was a little different. This day I could see her growing in frustration. I could see her that nothing that I was teaching her. I mean, she was getting more and more upset, frustrated, even starting to cry a little bit. And it was snowballing really quickly into not such a good place. So I said to her, Kayla, I'm just going to take a needed break. And Dad's going to go inside for a while. I think our time here is done. And I did.
And how old is Kayla?
Kayla at this particular time was probably 11 or 12. She's 13 now. The time I was writing this in the book, was probably about a year and a half ago. So she was probably just 11 or so, 11 and a half. So Mike, I went inside. So I did it because I was frustrated as well, but I wasn't benefiting her. So I figured, you know what, if I just give her space, she'll be fine. So I thought. I go inside. Well, what did I do really quickly? I peeked out the window. I mean, of course, a place that she would never see me.
Sure.
And I peeked out, and without my presence, she was even worse off. She now is throwing the ball in the air. She's slamming the ball she's picking the ball up, slamming it in the ground. Now she was like on the verge, like she was beginning to cry. And I was like, oh my goodness. I was watching her even worse off now than what she was when I was coaching her. And Mike, the best way I can describe this, something, the depth of my being, it like just compelled me to leave the house, go back out to her, not to say, what are you doing? Get back to work. Not that at all. It was completely the opposite. I found myself out of a place of genuine heart and care for my daughter. And I said, why don't we do this? We can either just say, let's stop altogether. And that's just it for today. And that's okay. You need to know that's okay. And I explained to her why. Sometimes we just need a break. Or if we're going to do it together, or if we're going to do it, can we do it together? And all of a sudden when I said, she goes, Dad, you mean do the drills together? You're going to do them beside me? She started to light up. And we started to dribble in unison together. We're going to do 50 dribbles with the weak hand. Boom, 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 together. Then we're going to do this. We're going to do shooting drills together. Everything was together. It wasn't me telling her what to do. It was me now facilitating a really special time of us doing the very same thing, but yet together. And don't you know that slowly but surely her countenance started to change. She was dribbling that much better. She was shooting that much better. At the end of the day, our relationship grew closer. The lesson for me in that was, what does it mean to literally come alongside and to take part in things with our team? Now, I understand as leaders, we can't always do that. We got other responsibilities. We got things to do. We got, multiple team members. I get it. But this particular day, it was a lesson that was etched in my heart and mind to say there are some times where team members don't need us to tell them what to do and leave them alone. But they want to actually experience us doing it with them, or an aspect of it with them. And could it be that in that experiential something together, that could in fact draw us closer together, build trust and foster trust in a very short period of time. And as an end result, not just accomplish the goal together, but even accomplish bigger and better things together. And that's the story of Kayla. So I encourage leaders, who's your Kayla right now? Who have you instructed? Yeah. Who have you instructed, but maybe there's not the momentum that we hope for. Maybe they're getting frustrated. Maybe they feel more alone, and we're peering out at them. We're looking out and being like, it's actually worse off that I've left them alone, and actually going in to their environment yet again and infuse life by sharing, taking part in it with them. And I'll tell you, game changer.
No, and I loved it. The reason I wanted you to share that is just sort of a segue from our last conversation, or our last little segment here a second ago. A couple things. One, and I always like to recap when the people I'm interviewing, make sure, because there's always such goodness there and so much insight and wisdom. I love the line, "Who's your Kayla?"
Yeah.
Right? Because and it's like it because I know who mine is. Like that immediately gets you emotional, whether it comes from the family aspect of it or in business. We have our Kaylas in business.
Mm-hmm.
And the interesting thing is what I felt there when you're sharing that is you moved from manager, coach, dad, right? Coach, dad, manager, dad, because you're coaching, you're on the outside instructing. So you're sort of across the table from her, to coming around the other side of the table because you knew you needed to at that point, and doing that side by side, mirroring and becoming mentor, coach, dad, if that makes sense. Totally. And so I love to hear stories like that. And people need to realize when whether it is in your personal life like this, when you're in business, there's a time and place to be that manager and be coaching across the desk, right? And there's a time to come around to the other side of the desk and put your arm around them and say, "Hey, what can I really do to serve you?" And I thought that was really, really powerful.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Yeah.
Yeah, man. So we've already been talking 45 minutes. That's how we roll. It doesn't even feel close to that. I know
it doesn't.
One thing, and here's something that people don't realize, because you brought this up right beforehand and we talked a little bit. When you talk about receiving, because I know you, you've experienced some trials and tribulations right now in your life with your family.
Yeah. And
while you're going through that, most people from the outside would not know, unless, and so that's one of those things. There's a certain level of strength and fortitude and resiliency, and this level of confidence that people look at you and go, "Well, yeah, Robb, he's this international bestseller. He's this speaker. He's this coach. He's this leader." The reality is you're also Robb the man, Robb the husband. And, your family's going through some stuff right now. Yeah. Do you want to expand on that?
I would love to. Thanks for going there. Love to do that. And I think, Mike, these lessons from Abdul, there's 10 lessons laid out in the book to help people overcome some of the challenges or barriers holding us back from genuinely receiving. And I think all these lessons Abdul shared with me, and that I've matured in certain areas throughout my life, have really prepared me for this moment, this season of my life, as it relates to what my wife is going through, what our family's going through.
Right.
About 6 months ago now, my wife was diagnosed with a very aggressive yet treatable form of breast cancer. She embarked in 4 months of intense chemotherapy that was followed by a reconstructive surgery. And now she's recovering. She's about three weeks removed from reconstructive surgery. And she will, about ready in a month, partake in radiation. So the overall process of beating this cancer, they're saying it'll be upwards of probably 9 months from when it began to maybe even a year. My we're going through it. We're right in the middle of it all. And so these things, these lessons Abdul shared with me and others have reinforced in my life, have certainly prepared me for arguably the most trying time of my entire life, my family's entire life together. But what I want to highlight in the midst of this is what we have had to receive. And there's one moment, Mike, where I believe this was like cancer treatment number 2. She ended up having 8 total sessions spanned out for 4 months. And this was treatment 2, and I was right by Karen's side. And it was one of these moments where it was just us in the room, no nurses. And we started looking each other's eyes. Now, again, we've been married, it'll be close to 20 years. We're climbing on 20 years now next month. And
congratulations on that.
Thank you so much. We're looking at each other's eyes without saying any words at all. Our eyes completely fill up and we start crying together. And now we're holding hands. We didn't have to say a word. But I really believe in that time that we were communicating certainly how much we loved each other, that we're in it together, regardless. And thirdly, that now we have to receive as deeply as we ever have before from our friends, family, church, neighborhood, overall network. This is going to put us in such a vulnerable state. However, we need to do this. So now I didn't know this when I wrote the book, but don't you know it? What we started to engage in after the book was written and what we continue to engage in has everything to do with genuinely and authentically receiving. And I trust me on this, Mike. I think that people are leaving so many deposits in us right now. We're receiving help. We're receiving support. We're receiving encouragement. We're receiving finances. We're receiving so many different things that are just filling us up. And I know there'll come a time where we will be able to, in and out of this place of receiving, we will be able to give more generously, more greatly, more powerfully than we ever have before. Why? Because we took these lessons and we've applied them to our life to set us up for greater success. So I just want to say thank you for allowing us to go there in this conversation. I think it's extremely applicable. It's timely. And so don't wait any longer. You don't have to wait for something extreme in your life to take place and then start receiving. You can do it today. You can do it now with great challenges, small challenges, or very little challenges. Perhaps you're even a leader watching this right now, and you're just experiencing a season of great blessing. Everywhere you look, there's positive fruit. Continue to receive. But you also could be watching this and like, Rob, I'm in the thick of things too. Maybe someone in your family is going through something, a trial, a tribulation. Maybe someone in the workplace, maybe you are just like curveball after curveball after curveball, fire to put out after fire to put out as a leader and a manager in the workplace. As you learn how to overcome the barriers and you'll learn how to genuinely receive, watch and see what begins to happen in time. Watch and see.
Man, that's so powerful. I normally at this point I would say, hey, any final thoughts, but I don't know. I think we just kind of, to close on that. One thing that I think is, thank you for sharing.
You're welcome.
Like, thank you for being vulnerable to be able to share, because that's something when people are going through difficulties, we feel like, the world's the world's coming at us. Well, sometimes it is. It's because they're trying to give you stuff, and you have to be open to receive it.
So true.
The other thing is, like, as you're sharing this, like, think of the power and the gift that you're giving others right now, and just having that conversation, and that, that exudes leadership and just your genuine heart, Rob. And I'm really honored that you took the time to share that. Yeah. So yeah, I certainly, if you have any final thoughts, what I'd like to share with everybody is, I'll say again, if you're not already connected with Rob, connect with Rob on LinkedIn. And he's you can go to robbholman.com. It's two B's, ROBBHOLMAN.com. You can go to LinkedIn and look for Robb Holman, ROBBHOLMAN. I would definitely say check out Rob's new book, Lessons from Abdul. Just a lot of really good insight in there. So much insight and just wisdom that you took the time to share today, Rob. I'm so appreciative. We were talking beforehand, like, I always love to connect with you. And it's one of those that it's like, it's been too long. We should make sure and set up and at least do a podcast once every couple quarters together.
Trust me, the feeling is so mutual, Mike. I mean that. It's just anytime, whether it's formal or informal, it doesn't matter to me. Like, it's life exchange. And I know I'm always going to leave time with Mike Phillips, just greatly encouraged and inspired. And you have such a wonderful heart. I call it like a shepherd's heart. Right. You just, you ask wonderful questions, but you sincerely care. And that's very telling. You model and reflect what a really effective and transformative leader is all about. And so I've been a recipient of that today, just how you facilitate our time. So for that, I say thanks and I really appreciate you.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you have any final thoughts before, and then you can hang out for a second? I mean, I think there's no better way to close it, man. I appreciate you.
Yeah. Appreciate too. Probably the one last thing I think I've learned in this overall journey, and I think if nothing else, it might be a period on the end of the sentence in light of what I just shared as well. There's a quote from Vivian Green that says something like this, that so many times people, when they're in the midst of storms, they want to run right out of it. But I want to learn what it means to dance in the rain.
Mm-hmm. I love that. Thank you, Robb. And if you want to hang out for just a minute, and we'll close out here real quick.
Thanks
Thank you so much for your time today.
You bet. Thank you.
And everybody, that is going to bring us to a close for another episode of the Leadership Toolkit with my good friend, Robb Holman. I encourage you, go connect with him on LinkedIn. Check out his website. If you're interested, check out his book, lessonsfromabdul.com. You can get it there. You can get it on Amazon. And I will tell you, I'm going to give Robb a plug here real quick too, because if you are a business owner, if you're somebody that is looking for someone that has been boots on the ground, knows how to lead, knows how to coach, and knows how to move people in an organization, look him up and connect with him. He's a phenomenal coach. He's a phenomenal speaker as far as, workshops and training. I went through a leadership and speaking workshop with Robb, a couple of years ago. And I can't even put a figure on the amount of value that I got out of something like that. So I would encourage you, connect with Robb Holman, because he's awesome. For everybody that joined me today, thank you. I hope you've gained a whole lot out of this. Do me a favor, make sure that you share this show with somebody that needs to hear this message. Click the like button, share the show. It'll be on Spotify. It's on YouTube here. We're all over the place for the Leadership Toolkit. Share the Leadership Toolkit and tune in next week with us at live.theleadershiptoolkit.com. Until I see you next week at 12:05 Mountain Time, stay great. We'll talk soon, everybody.